Hello everyone, my name is Vili and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity. Welcome to AANHPI Heritage Month as we recognize the contributions and influence of Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander descent in the US. Our guest today is Liz Jayankura-Jones, Chief Revenue Officer and COO at the Online Lenders Alliance. Welcome to Humans of Authenticity, Liz. I'm so glad that you're here with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our listener first?
Sure. My name is Liz Jayankura-Jones, as you've just heard, and I am the Chief Revenue Officer at Online Lenders Alliance. I've been there for about 13 years. We're based right outside of Washington, D.C. in Arlington, Virginia. And I've been here since I actually came to college at GW in D.C. So I've been in D.C. a while, but I'm originally from the suburban Chicago.
Can you also share who you are outside of work?
I live in Arlington, Virginia, as I said, with my family. I have 3 children who are so growing up way too fast. One's going to be a freshman in high school next year. So she's 13, and I've got an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they take up a lot of my time, but it's worth it. It's always a challenge keeping on my toes. I also live with my mother. My mother lives here and she helps out. So that's been a really huge blessing. And my husband is a soccer coach. So he actually has all the kids. So my kids all play soccer. So that's kind of what he's in charge of. But amazingly, I still end up driving a lot to a lot of soccer games because they all want to play everything else too. So I have a very busy, healthy life outside of work. And same with working in the office. We're in the office 4 days a week, which is kind of different from a lot of people in our area. We went back to the office relatively quickly, so I never really had time away from the office setting. But we're a very small trade organization, so working out that work-life balance was challenging before. And I feel that, like, even though I'm afforded more flexibility and everything after COVID, it's still, I don't know, it's just like it just presented different challenges. I think that my family in particular, I think, had different needs after COVID. I did as well. I realized that my dreams of working from home before COVID was, quickly realized when we were all together, the 6 of us, all together all the time, every day. We had school in the living room. We had everything all together. And I think the whole family, even at the time, my 5-year-old realized that too much together time is nice and all, but I think even she realized that it was a bit much and that we needed our lives outside of our living room. So that was an interesting thing we learned.
Can you unpack that a little bit more, that particular experience of being together, the whole 6 of you, then every time, every day? Does that experience change you in particular, or your perspective, or your dynamic, or your relationship with each other?
Yeah, it definitely did. I think for me, it taught me a lot about patience and kind of rolling with the punches and really, I kind of always knew in my brain that, you can't, to not get frustrated at things you cannot control, right? We went to webinars, seminars, and talked to mentors and people much wiser than me have said that. And I've never truly internalized it until we were really, sitting there like, man, we cannot control any of this, no amount of letter writing or complaints or anything was gonna, put the soccer team back together so my kid has something to do after school, which was all in our house. So I think I learned to be a lot more patient. I think the relationship between my husband and I was that, I think we're running around, we're very busy. We live in an area that like everybody is like this. So it just feels normal, right? It's not like we're like this odd couple that like never really goes out on date night, everything. Everyone complains, oh, we need more date nights and blah, blah, blah. And I think we really felt that when we're sitting home alone with nothing else to do with just each other and the kids are in bed. So it taught us a lot about that aspect of our relationship too, how to be together. So, it was a very accelerated experience. Like, I don't know if we would have really learned that in like if that didn't really happen. Now we are very good about making the effort to just kind of like even going out for a quick dinner, even if we have to like rush over to pick someone up from the soccer practice after. I think is something that we're like, we don't just say, oh, we don't have time. We try to make those things work. And I think the same with my children, where, they're kids, like there's three of them. So there's always one odd person out. They bicker a lot. They're going through this phase where they're like bickering. But I think when it comes down to it, the whole experience, even as little kids back then, they realized kind of like the value of their like having a relationship with their siblings, which I think was a very important lesson. And I hope that they kind of bring that along with them. And I'm seeing that as my 13-year-old becomes more teenager and going into high school and making all these different friends and facing all these different challenges in her life, I see how she pulls from those experiences. And it's really, really cool thing to see. And it's one of those mom moments where one of those parenting moments really where you're like, oh, I think I might have taught her that because, like we've talked about this and she's asked me about this and we set examples and, so it's kind of neat to see when some of your work gets implemented even in your children, much like in the workplace at the office. So that's been very rewarding for me. I'm not one to really look at the bright side of things. That takes effort for me. I'm very like half empty, kind of preparing for the worst case scenario. I think as in my role at work for as a COO planning and operations, especially during COVID and everything, that my role that I play at the workplace is like planning for the worst case scenario, right? And that's why I kind of like the number 2 position, because I think I naturally incline towards that. It's easier for me. And then my CEO can be the optimistic face of the organization and talk to staff. And I'm kind of like the one that, is like, oh, that's too expensive, maybe. I hold the purse strings and things like that. So that kind of leans to my personality. So, for our family planning purposes, we are very much like, my husband's the fun soccer coach, real cool guy, and the kids look to that. And I'm more of the like, well, let's be safe, things like that. So
What I really like about what you've just shared is a reminder that we need to appreciate the things around us, the little things that sometimes we take for granted. So I really appreciate hearing that message coming through. And it's also remind me that as soon as we can start appreciating everything around us, then we can be more intentional about how we spend our time and energy towards the thing that matter the most for us. So when you mentioned the mom moments, I saw your eyes sort of spark up with some joy, with some proud moment there. Is there a story that you can share with us?
yeah, so my oldest daughter has been having kind of like the year of her life, and it wasn't really planned. It was kind of accidental, and I not accidental, but I wasn't expecting it, I guess. You make these little decisions throughout the day and the year, and then like when it all culminates, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, right? So she's finishing up her last year of middle school, so she's she's very serious about her schoolwork, and and she works really hard. She's been great. And last year there was this opportunity to take a spring break trip to Costa Rica with the school. And and she really wanted to do it. She brought it to us. She's like, there's about 20 kids going. And, we're like, oh, well, it's next year. A lot could happen, It's like, well, this is what I really want to do. And I said, are you sure? Like, I don't think any of your friends are going or any of them going. And she's like, I don't care. I want to do this as part of like getting out of my comfort zone. Like, like it would be cool if a friend was coming, but I want to meet new people and do new things. So we're like, okay, this was like last March. And so, we're planning for it. We sneaking conversations here and there. And then when the time came last month, it was getting closer. And we're like, you sure we still want to do this? Because she was getting busy with school and other things. And she's like, oh, yeah, yeah. But that kind of required her, it was like a guided tour, but she had to like pack her own things. And she's never, this is the Costa Rica. She's never traveled internationally without us and all this stuff. So we're like, okay, it was one of those, and she's our oldest. So it's one of those, everything with her is like, roll of the dice. Like, it's just like, let's hope this works out. So she went, and thank God for technology, because if I went to Costa Rica when I was 13, I mean, it's radio silent. Like, I wouldn't really have a way to communicate with my family, maybe in an internet cafe, but she had her phone, everything, and she's like texting us and keeping us updated with everything. And she's just literally having the time of her life. I'm so glad that she went, even with all, and she experienced some things like, she had, it's like a kid's school trip, right? So the flights were like terrible. They like left at like 2 a.m. They went to Panama for like, there was a layover. It was terrible. Her luggage didn't make it back on the thing. So she didn't have her suitcase with her. And, if you were to tell me all these things that were going to happen, I would have been like, there's no way you can handle this. I can't handle it from here, But you know what? She was like, yeah, mine was the only suitcase that didn't make it. Everyone's got their shorts. I'm in my hoodie and it's like 80 degrees. She's got all these issues. And so she actually took it with so much stride. I feel like I stressed out more. My husband and I stressed out more about those things. And she was like, it's no big deal. It's fine. I borrowed a pair of shorts from this girl, and then she like made friends. And I mean, she literally told me she had the best time of her life. And, she came back like having grown so much from that experience. And it was something that like, I mean, I guess we kind of gave her, but it was something that, we didn't like handhold her and take her to Costa Rica and here. And sometimes you try to do that and give those experiences to your kids. And we're now learning very quickly that a lot of it is just kind of letting them go and experiencing their own thing. And I think the biggest thing for her from that was that she didn't go with mom and dad. And all her friends were like, wait, you're going to Costa Rica for spring break? That's cool. But like, wait, you're not going with your mom and dad. Like, what are you going to do if you, whatever. And she just like was such a grown up about it. And we were just so proud. And she is like really starting to get the grades at school. And she's doing all these things. She's playing high school lacrosse in 8th grade. And I'm just like, I can just go on and on. All these things kind of happened really fast this spring. So yeah, I had a bunch of mom moments because I've had a lot of people kind of come up to me lately about like, wow, Karis is on this, she's doing that. I'm seeing her everywhere. And, I worried about the burnout rate on that because there's a lot of physical changes and mental, emotional changes going on when you're going on 14. But she seems to be, handling it, and kind of just the self-awareness she's got. I'm so proud. And that's, kind of like, I haven't really like kind of said all that out loud in one shot there, but maybe one day she'll listen to this. But like, so that is like kind of the moments that I'm living for right now, the mom moments, this next phase in parenting where you're like, I mean, there are challenges. It's not all great, but like there are a lot of challenges for just like being there as a person grows up. I mean, they're my kids, but they're just now, it's just trying to develop authentic humans, like just trying to, it's changed a lot of mine and my husband, like our behaviors and things we say, just because we know they pick up on everything. And it's different from like a toddler picking up on swear words. Like my kids are constantly eavesdropping in our conversations, so we can't literally talk about anything that we don't necessarily need them to hear the raw stuff, like, wait, what's happening? Why are you mad at that coworker? Like we vent about our work like any husband and wife may do. But my 11-year-old is just like, what are you gonna blah, blah, someone getting fired at your work? I'm like, no, just stop. So those are kind of like, yeah. So I light up when I think about mom moments, because I have found that my kids are all going through these phases where there's a lot of mom moments, even little, like they're very small. A lot of them are very small things. I just described a very big thing, but like finding that left cleat that the kid just cannot find no matter how hard they look. And I literally just know exactly where it is, kind of thing. Like my kids think it's like magic that I just know where everything is. So, but I don't know. I keep telling them that it's because I put everything away. If you put everything away, you would also find things. And that connection hasn't really been,
hasn't taken yet.
hasn't really sunk in yet. But yeah, so So yeah, that's been kind of like my world lately is outside of work, which
Mhm.
is ramping up as well. There's a lot
That
of
is so
parallels.
lovely. So lovely.
Her
What's her name?
name's Karis.
Karis. So, Karis, if you're listening to this is world-class problem solving, and I'm admiring your attitude towards missing luggages and 2 a.m. layovers
uh,
and all of that. This is so cool. So, I'm curious, and thank you again for being so open to talk about different aspects of your stories. What is the one thing that you like the most about yourself in these different moments?
oh, that's hard. What do I like about myself? I think it's just the resiliency I because I have found the way I deal with challenges is to not look back at it so much. I think that the feeling of regret is probably one of the most evil feelings for me. I don't like that feeling. So, and as I mentioned earlier, I just have a natural tendency to be a glass half empty person. So I put in the effort to be more optimistic and more glass half full kind of person. And I think one of the things that I've learned in life and I'm very proud of for myself is that I try to make lemonade out of lemon. And you just don't get really good until without practice. You just like have to fail. You have to overhear someone talking badly about you, things like, like all these terrible experiences that sounds like it's from middle school or high school, but they still happen in real life, in the workplace, and on the soccer pitch, like wherever you go, wherever your day takes you. You just kind of have to experience those things. And then I think that really kind of lights up the self-awareness, like, oh my gosh, I have not smiled a single minute today. I'm like at the grocery store all grumpy. I'm like grumpy with my kid just because I had like a bad day and I let something so small affect me, and just realizing that, you know what, I have just been moping around all day. And just being aware of that more, I think is one thing that I would say I do like about myself. People always call it like resting bitch face, and I think that I have that. I'm pretty sure I do. I have to try to take that off. So
What I like about that is a self-awareness piece. And I talk a lot about self-awareness in this work because
mhm.
without being aware of where we are at and then understanding all the layers of emotions around that, we won't be able to get away or progress or learn more or move on or get new perspective. So I really admire how you spin it and give the perspective on self-awareness.
Yeah.
And this might be a hard question, but just hear me out. I'm curious about that feeling of regret and making lemonade out of lemons. My question is, was there a hard decision that you made that you don't regret now thinking about it?
Yeah. I was in a very bad place professionally, and I think we've all been there where, it was just not the right fit. It wasn't the right job. Or like something happening in your situation where you just like you're looking for a job, right? You're just like trying to get out because there's a toxic work environment. And the job search is really hard. I've been talking to a lot of people about it lately, actually. I'm not currently searching for a job, but I am a hiring manager. Like I hire for our organization. So I've been on the other side of it. And, I just feel like there's so much unsaid between the hiring manager and the prospective employee. But I did a while back, had a couple interviews, great job. I really wanted it. I went through all the way and I got an offer, and I looked more closely at it, and like there was a commitment for their annual conference that just falls on my kids' birthdays. So the two of my kids have birthdays in the same week. So it would have, and they planned their conference like 5 years out. So I knew, and they were little. So like, I was like, I can't miss the next five birthdays for a conference, like, and that was the first time where, like we always say, oh, this is adulting. Like that was like my real first adulting moment, which was sad because it was after I became a parent, but like Trump actually having the babies. It was like, gosh, I turned down this great job and I really want to get out, and it was great. But I was like, I'm sorry, they actually came back and offered more money. It was such a great fit, but I just was like, I just can't do this, and I expected to feel regret from that, but I never did because every birthday that I enjoy with my kids, I kind of think back, it's been a while now, but I think back about like, I'm glad I'm here for it. And now I'm at the point where my kids are too busy to hang out with me on their birthdays. They're like, we want to do this for our birthdays. So, but back then when they were really little, that meant a lot. And that kind of made me realign my values a bit. There's something to be said about saying you put family first, but like, what does that really mean? Because I made that decision, does that mean that I wasn't like loyal to myself and my career path? That was a big question for me. And did that one decision mean that I was very loyal to my family because, but I was miserable at my job, like I wanted to be a happier person as well. So who was I betraying in that decision, right? Or who was I being loyal to? Like I think that's still up in the air, to be honest. I don't know. But I'm glad it happened for a reason because a lot of opportunities came up after that. And, I was able to make the lemonade.
Listening to that story, it is again reminding me the importance of self-awareness because as soon as we are fully aware of our core values, then we can start looking at the alignment between our values and what we want to do next.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you sharing that stories. Let's get to the keyword discussions. You sort of preempted it already. So I provide you a list with 12 keywords. Which one do you select?
I select loyalty. And the reason I did that was I do feel like that is thematic. I think all of us are always in a position to have to make choices, big choices to very little tiny choices during the day. And I think that is true of your professional life, your work life, and then your personal life as well, right? The little choices are the ones that probably take up the most time, I think. And those choices sometimes are an indication of one's loyalty. So, like in the case of, my choosing not to take on a position that I thought at the time was perfect for me, it was really thinking about like not only core values alignment, but also who am I being loyal to and who am I being disloyal to when I make these decisions. And in looking back at my career and my life and my path really all together, I thought it was a really interesting keyword to explore. And I think from these conversations, I probably learned more about myself than I'm contributing out there to society. So I appreciate that very much. So I've been thinking about that a lot. And, the two main things, and I think this applies to a lot of people, is, and just to simplify it, is like work and family for me. And they say, can you have it all? And I joke with some of my mom friends that, yes, we can have it all. Why can't we? Why is it so hard? What's happening in our society that, and then when you try to have it all, you experience burnout and then you're just so tired all the time, or somebody's mad at you, or you're letting somebody down. And there's all these like negative connotations to having it all. It almost feels selfish when you try to achieve that, right? But what I've learned more recently than I like to admit is like, I got to define having it all. Like, well, what does having it all mean to me? And I think everyone's got to figure that out for themselves. Because I really do feel like for a long time I was like just like killing myself to like have it all. And I think that meant having everybody be happy about what I'm doing. And I mean everybody. I mean the guy bagging my groceries. like I was trying to please everybody. I did not want anybody to be mad or have a negative, and that's just not realistic. Like I realized I just didn't have realistic goals. So for me, it was a lot of like breaking down of what I really wanted to do and recognizing that my goals and loyalties can change over time and that they need to. They just need to. In a world where everything around us is changing so much, why aren't our priorities or our core values changing with it? And when I thought about it more like that, it started to make a lot more sense to me. So, you know, if I'm hopping on a plane to go to a work trip that I knew I needed to do, but I'm leaving my children destitute to their own means and having to find their own uniforms for games and all that, that's okay. It does not mean that I am leaving my family behind and do, like those are the small decisions, right? And I just kind of had to like define what having it all is. And I think that is for me, the feeling of I've just got everything that I've committed to, I've got a handle on. And if I don't have a handle on it, I need to think about whether I can commit to it and just being able to say, I can go this far with this project or whatever it is. And, most of the time it's really just trying to be loyal to myself and my own values and priorities. That's kind of like what it's very, very difficult and challenging for me to kind of think about me, myself, and I, because that feels selfish and that's just not intrinsic. It's a very cultural thing. Both my parents are Thai. I was raised in a single family. It was just my mother, my sister, and I. And my grandmother lived with us. That's an Asian thing. We always had grandparents around. And it was all women in my house. And we all had to work really hard. Then I watched my mom work like 3 jobs, trying to still do all the silly things at the time wasn't silly, but we requested of her, and picking me up at school at 3:30. Well, that's the middle of a workday for most normal adults, but you don't realize that when you're 13. I know that was something that I look back and I see that. And it's just like thinking about yourself. There were a lot of things that I was like, that's not good. It feels selfish, right? If I don't think about the family or the work or my staff or so I think just having that self-awareness and the realization that you got to kind of take care of yourself first in order to be an effective leader, an effective parent, an effective daughter, an effective, just to be all those roles that we play.
I think that piece about almost feeling selfish in particular, it is about perspective, right? And you say that it is about awareness and looking after yourself. You need to be okay before you are able to look after those around you. So I just want to pause and acknowledge that. There are so much that I love from what you just shared, and so much more questions I want to unpack around that. And I love also how you mentioned those questions in the story that you just shared. So we might pick a few and then unpack that together if you're up for it. The first one that I'm really drawn to is the disloyal piece. So have you got an answer for who or what you are disloyal to when time comes for you to make a decision?
Disloyal? I think it's all in context. And I tend to think of things more holistically. And I think that also comes with the job as you kind of advance in your career and the type of jobs that you get, as you move into management roles, you tend to have to think about everybody as a team, right? And what's best for the organization and things like that. And that's not always what's best for the individual, including myself, right? That applies to the home as well. I have a lot of work trips. I have a lot of opportunities to travel for work, for professional development, and for my organization. And I told myself this year as part of my resolution that I was going to take on a lot more of that. And I also let my family know, meaning my husband, because he's the one that has to deal with everything. But my kids are like, whatever. And I did that. I mapped out the year and I kind of had like this whole, I'm going to get back into my professional development because it kind of halted for me. I had a good lifeline during COVID with being in the SAE STELT program, but I was like, I got to do more for Liz and her career path because I'm going to get bored at work. I just feel like I needed to do that. It wasn't switching jobs. It was just more professional growth, right? So those decisions I have to make, schedules are crazy. So of course, I'm like, I'm going to take this trip and it's on this date. 10 soccer games pop up in that time. And I got to like manage all this stuff with my kids and being away for the weekend. And so the decision to go on my professional trip is like not that I'm being disloyal to my family, because I am actually literally handing them everything on a silver platter. I mean, I coordinate all the things, right? But in the overall picture, I'm making like 90% of the games that all three of them play, right? And I am maximizing value when I go. So I'm a lot pickier about where I go, what I do. And when I'm there, I can't just like lollydaddle all over, right? It's got to be like, I got to meet the right people and like I've got to find value in it. Because I remember when you're 25, you get a cool trip. And I had a lot of great travel when I was younger in a job. I've been to Dubai and India, and, like no kids, no boyfriend or anything. It was awesome. I could have stayed a little longer. I didn't have any money to spend, but it goes a long way in India. It was awesome. I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And now I get like cankles when I travel more than 12 hours, and it's like a whole thing. My values changed. Traveling isn't like my biggest thrill anymore, and it totally used to be. So it's just the self-awareness and recognizing that those changes are going to happen.
I'm hearing a pattern of value change over time throughout the conversation with you so far. There are contexts for how our values being evolved over time, right? And there will be scenarios where a certain values will be more important than others. But if you're looking at your journey from the beginning, is there one value that has been staying with you regardless of the timeline?
I think for me, it is definitely maintaining, and I think this is why the keyword appealed to me, is a sense of loyalty to a certain degree to kind of what I was feeling accountable for. And that means not burning bridges, having that foresight that the world is a really small place and DC is a very even smaller place. I mean, incredibly small. And I don't mean small town things, but like really random people have popped back into my life over the years in very random and weird ways. And I think this happens to a lot of people, but I haven't lived in many places. Like I came from Chicago to DC in college, and I've lived here. I didn't really move around or anything. I've traveled around, but just those two anchors in my places I've lived in my life has brought so many random coincidences and people that know each other and connecting dots and things like that, professionally and personally. I think the one big thread is just kind of like always maintain integrity, because you just never know when people are going to pop back into your life, whether it's in a negative context or a positive context. A lot of times people change, and just giving the universe kind of like that whole no burning bridges kind of deal. Like I really try to. Now, does that mean I keep in touch with everybody and that I have ever? No, I'm actually really bad at keeping in touch with people. I actually have many amazing friendships through the years. And actually, my husband just made a remark about how, wow, you still keep in touch with these girls from like 5th grade. We just took a trip. I mean, it's really quite amazing. People are kind of like, oh, you're still friends with those guys? And we keep in touch. And it is completely 1000% the credit to my friends. Because I'm really bad at like out of the blue, hey, what's going on? And that's actually another thing that I've been trying to do more. But I happen to have very good friends from a young age that are very good at that. And it wasn't by design. They're just good at keeping in touch. And that's how I maintain a lot of friendships. But yeah, I think you never know who's going to come back into your life. So just always keep the door open.
I love hearing that. It's perspective, right? But I also want to pause and acknowledge that you must have done something so that they wanted to keep in touch with you. So it's a two-way street, right? So that credit should be shared between you and your friends.
Thank you.
Now let's go back to that loyal piece. You mentioned a couple of things about loyal to yourself. What are you being loyal to? Have you got your answer on those questions?
I really do. I think one of the big, and we've talked about parenting and all these experiences and kind of the changes that me and my growing family are going through right now. And I think the biggest motivation for me, and I don't see this ever changing, because I've never felt really as strongly about anything, is really setting an example for my kids, creating authentic humans, like we said. They don't have to change the world or be brain surgeons or cure cancer, but it's just seeing their friendships that they have and how they interact with people is just creating humans out there that are going to make the world a little bit better in some small way or make someone's day. The little examples I always told my kids, because they've gone to the same school system since they were little and they know the same people. They've never switched schools, which is different for me. I've switched schools a few times growing up. But I'm like, whenever there's a new kid in your class, go up to the new kid and make friends with them. I don't care who it is, how, just say hi, play with them at recess one day. You just never know what kind of impact that kid is going to be like so lonely. They don't know anybody. And like, I think some, like, definitely at least one kid took that advice. And they ended up being really good friends. And then we got to know the family. It's just like, seeing my kids feel that payoff by just something so small is really gratifying. So I think the motivation, particularly for my daughters, in setting the example for them on how to manage the work-life balance. It's difficult for me to explain what I do for a living to my kids because their dad's a soccer coach. It's very easy that they know what that is. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer or something that I can go on career day in third grade and really like explain. And like, funny side note, on this area on career day, I'd be going after like the helicopter pilot or the astronaut or something. And like there's so many people with so many cool jobs. But I've never done career day, but my husband coaches soccer and he's done that. And that's very popular with the kids. So my kids haven't really ever thought about my work. They just know like I go to work. And like work is actually taking me away from whatever they needed me for. So as they get older, particularly for my daughters, my big motivation is to show them by example that you don't have to pick between loyalties between your home and work life. You should really aspire to be whatever it is that you want to do because you'll work it out.
Yeah, that's really the mentality of the world is our oysters, and we should not box ourselves to any limits, right? It's really inspiring. So I'm curious, again, throughout your stories and journey, have your loyalty ever been tested?
Definitely has. I'm trying to think of a good example. There's so many segments, different loyalties. I mean, down to, like I said, small decisions. And I know this interview is sounding like my kids are all consuming. I guess they are, but okay, I have a couple of experience. So the small decisions with my kids sometimes, and it feels like a joke, but with my mom hat, it's not a joke to me because my kids will always be like, "Oh, who's your favorite kid? Who's your favorite child?" And like all things, my whole life I've masked things with humor, but I always say, "You guys are all my favorite. I love you all equally," and they're old enough to be like, "Oh, whatever." And then some days they ask me that. I'm like, you guys all annoy me equally. Like none of you are my favorite. You equally are making me so mad right now, right? So they know how to push my buttons, so they know that. So, but like little things like that, I feel like my loyalty is always being tested whenever I have to like, do I go to this Girl Scout event or do I try to go to my son's game? Like because I can't do both. And it's funny because my husband and I do like split, like we try to be there for everything, and sometimes you just can't. But like little things like that, it's not a big example, but like I said, the little decisions really kind of build up. And then in the professional setting, I really do feel my loyalty is being tested sometimes when, and this happens ironically because I do get out there more now, like even in my own organization, I'm trying to go to more events and talk and just reach out. As an introvert, I usually just sit back and people come and talk to me. So now I'm trying, and because I've been there for over a decade, I know people, and there are people I've known for over 10 years I haven't really sat down and had a conversation with. So I'm trying to do more of that. And sometimes there's opportunities that come up, and my loyalty is tested between staying with my organization or doing something new. And then I just kind of have to make that determination. I'm not getting like job offers thrown at me by any means, but there's definitely a little bit of like forks in the road that come up for me that is like, oh, do I branch out and do something on my own, or do I want to try something new, a different organization? Maybe it's a different industry, or, I don't know. But sometimes those little decisions kind of spring up from time to time. And I feel like my loyalty is being tested. But I do feel like if you have that main core value, like for me, it's what is the best thing for my family. That's why I get fulfillment from work, obviously, from interacting and things. I joke about I could never be a stay-at-home mom. There's enough to do, but I've always worked. But why am I working? It's for my family, not just to provide for them, but also just to be a better, more growth mindset person. And I think that's really kind of helped me with parenting. There's a lot of parallels in managing a staff and parenting. Very weird. It's not something I expected when I started working.
I can imagine. What I love about what you just shared is you use your own values as a framework, as an anchor, so that when you deal with situation or making decisions, you use that anchor to negotiate the way that you are going with. I really appreciate how you put it like that. So it's like a blueprint for us to make decisions with our core value. There we go. What's next for you in the coming 12 months?
I've got some fun stuff coming up, actually. We're going to do a big summer vacation this year with my husband's family. His dad's turning 70, so like all the cousins and all that, we're all going to Spain, and my kids are super excited about it. So that's something to look forward to. And then each year we go away to see his family in Wales for Christmas. So we got that going on. From a professional standpoint, I am actually continuing my year of saying yes and doing more things. So I have a couple of trips planned for, and all those things. I am trying to launch my Women in Fintech event and trying to kind of build that up more for our annual conference. We had an event last year, and this is kind of like a side project for work that is turning into the main project. I just really need to find some time to get into it. So I'm trying to develop that and just kind of doing research and attending events that are focused towards women in the professional setting and what people like to talk about, what things they have in common. And it's kind of cool to see the things that people are interested in talking about. And I think it's totally different than the approach that we used to have. We used to just kind of throw together a little reception, but I think there's actually this hunger for more things to be addressed in financial services industry for women participating. So I'm looking forward to kind of building that out more this year and beyond.
That is cool. I'm curious about the part that you say this is your year of saying yes. What are some of the yes that you have been saying to this year?
So I mentioned the initiative on women in fintech at my organization. I've taken that on. That's not something that was really on my plate from before. So I said yes to that. There's a lot of like industry and professional development trips that have come on the horizon. I attended Association Forum's Women Exchange for the first time this year. That was something I've been like kind of looking at for a long time and never really pulled the trigger. So this year I said, yes, I'm going to do that. I said yes to the speaking opportunity at ASAE. I actually did that to lock myself into going because it's such a busy time And every year we like have this decision I make about whether I go to ASAE annual because it's right before our annual conference. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to plan for it. We're going, and I'm going to make it work. So I also have a couple people more on staff that I'm managing this year, and I'm trying to say yes more to some of the professional development things that they've brought up. And really, I'm very pro professional development for myself and my staff, and my staff don't really bring them to me. I trying to get more of my people into ASAE. So I'm like, go to MMCC, let's go to these conferences. Here's what's available. And, they're like, okay. So hopefully that will become a habit of things, that they can see more resources with all the things that they have to be better at their work and just get out there more. A lot of times I sit at staff meetings, I feel like I'll ask my people, my COO group or my ASE folks or my dope crew, or, like I have a lot of outlets to ask, and I don't feel like my staff really has that, a lot of that. And I think it's very fulfilling. It would be very fulfilling for them to be able to reach out and do that. So I've said yes to a bunch of those. My kids have been asking me, there's this movie called Yes Day. And so my kids have been asking me for a yes day, but I haven't committed to that.
That is so cool.
Yeah. I'm not saying yes to everything, but I'm trying to have that more of that mentality. I think maybe we will give them a yes day one day. So,
I mean, it is my observation throughout our conversation. You start the conversation with what I'm hearing is a risk sort of adverse positions. And now I see that you are start saying yes more. So I really see the transformation here. That's really cool. And I'm also hearing a lot of that intentionality that you want to carve out and dedicate energy and time to. So that is really cool. Thank you again for bringing that up. We get to the last question of the episode, and I hope you have fun with this one. So imagining yourself going on a dream vacation tomorrow, assuming that you have all of the necessity items with you. What is the one more item that you would take with you?
what is the one item that's not a necessity? I don't know, man. This is a weird question and a weird time because I have really been hammering away like these trips we're taking with for my kids and for myself to pack light, like literally, I just carry on lately.
It's cool.
So this question makes me dig into like the opposite, like what I don't need. What would I bring? Oh my gosh, I don't
I
know.
gotcha. All right, no
This
worries.
is hard. That's hard. I feel like all my answers would be lame because right now I'm on a little bit of a shopping spree. I have these heels that I love and I would love to like wear on these trips, like dinner and stuff. But I never pack them because they're like big and clunky. Dream vacation would be like a pair of really uncomfortable shoes that's not practical to pack.
But it's for a
That's a
nice
lame
dinner and
answer.
nice occasion. So I think it will worth it. It's give you choice, right? There's something with heels that give us that boost of empowerment.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a red lipstick like I'm wearing today because I needed the boost of empowerment. That's
There
my
we go.
thing. Yeah, I guess I don't need that, but it's easy enough to carry on. But yeah, I
There
always
we,
need a red lip. That always makes me a little bit more confident.
there we go. This is the end of the episode. Thank you again for your time and sharing your story with me and my listener.
My name is Liz Jayankura-Jones, and you're listening to Humans of Authenticity.